Welcome, everybody. This is Eric Faith from Stratum Consulting. Take it away, Eric.
All righty. Well, here we go. We've got a nice presentation put together today. It's, I think, roughly 950 slides, so we'll try to hit this in an hour. I'm pretty sure we can do it, but we'll see here. So just introduce ourselves. I'll start with me since I'm already talking here, and I know I should go ladies first here, but my name's Eric Faith, and somewhat known as a crazy suit guy. I guess it's been about 5 years now. Every year I wear a different suit to inform, and I've got a nice collection of them now. I can wear one for each day of the week, but help focus on the business development side of Stratum. I'll let Jacqueline introduce herself here.
Hey everybody, I'm Jacqueline Tucker. I help head up our support side of the business, and I'm here just to kind of help Eric out, talk about what we're going to review in this presentation.
So most of you probably know Stratum. We're an N4 Alliance partner. We solely focus on the N4 EAM ecosystem. And during the presentation today, we're basically going to highlight and visually show some of the functionality in EAM that's outside of the typical work order management stuff. So we'll keep it at a 30,000 foot view, and then could potentially dive into demos in a future date for some of the things that might be interesting to you. So today we're going to focus on, like I said, the enhanced EAM functionality. We've broken this up into 4 different areas or domains that we think can move your organization above and beyond the simple work management program. So I'll start with the first one, asset data integrity. So, raising the data quality that's for visibility into an asset's short and long-term performance.
The next section we're going to talk about is boosting work efficiency. So we really want to look at the tools that N4 has to increase our labor efficiency and how we use those to clearly communicate priorities and responsibilities to the right people. The third section we've broken our presentation into is asset condition monitoring. This is where we really want to kind of dive in and utilize root cause analysis data, and we do that by leveraging the systematic monitoring of assets within EAM.
And then last, we'll talk about the asset investment planning. So all this data that we have in EAM and the varying systems that we use, how do we harness that information to help us forecast, project, and understand the cost of when assets need to be replaced?
And so we hope at the end of the presentation, we have a few minutes to answer questions or comments that have come up. But if we run out of time or throughout the presentation, if you will enter those questions into the chat section of the Amazon Chime meeting, then we can always refer back to them and either answer them by email or maybe do a blast back out on the public sector page. Let's see. So first up, we want to kind of dive into the data integrity section of this presentation. We know that accurate data is important and really fundamental to any system or organization. But Eric, why is the topic of data integrity so important for really moving an organization out of just a work order management program?
Well, I think we could, well, I know we could definitely have an entire presentation that's just around data and, making data viable, basically. But data integrity, by definition, it's the overall completeness and accuracy and consistency of data. So our data within EAM, it's a fundamental element that allows us the opportunity to act or see repeat offenders, forecast end of life, effectively plan for asset replacement, as I referred to earlier. But from a data perspective, we have to be able to enhance our master data information without compromising the data's overall usability.
Eric, that's a really great answer. It provides insight and kind of a clear understanding as to what data integrity means within asset management. So let's dive into the first section we're going to talk about. We want to look at equipment ranking within EAM. And when this is implemented in the system, what does equipment ranking provide the organization?
Well, equipment ranking, it provides, the function itself provides us with the capability to really implement a formalized scoring system to assign a ranking score. I mean, we've had the equipment criticality field in the EAM versions for years, but that was really a static field. It didn't have much meat to it. What we have with the ranking portion here is we can create a survey that basically is configured by us, but we can create this survey that takes into account questions that we define. So things like equipment function, the process criticality or redundancy, environmental impacts if this thing would shut down or fail, as well as safety impacts.
Right. So, Eric, once we add these ranking scores to the equipment or the assets, these scores can then be used in our maintenance planning section to make sure that the issues with the highest ranking rise to the top of the backlog, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So those scores do show up, and we can filter on that. So the other thing that we can add to the equipment ranking is the decay curve functionality, which is fairly new, and we'll talk more about that towards the end of our presentation here.
Oh, and that's a fun new feature that we'll get to touch on. So next up, we want to talk about the calculated work order priority feature in EAM. So the last slide we talked about equipment ranking, and now we've kind of turned the tables and are talking about the work order priority or work order ranking.
Yeah, so the calculated priority, it's basically an algorithm designed to optimize the prioritization of work orders. So, this is really in the planning phase or backlog management of our work orders. So something that would be used for maintenance planners or schedulers, maybe even supervisors too. But this is it adds a more robust capability to our ranking of work orders. It also ensures that the highest priority, criticality basically of the work is always prominent. So one thing to note though with this module is that alert management is required because that's what drives this calculated priority score. So it refreshes daily.
And that makes sense. So, Eric, when we're setting up this feature, setting up the calculated priority, what type of data do we use and what's necessary to make this function?
It's pretty simple in a sense. I mean, we've got work order types, so the types of jobs that we're performing, and here you can see on the list the corrective breakdowns, and we've got MEC work orders showing up here, but just the different types of work orders, and we can weigh those accordingly. So breakdowns might be more important than a corrective, so on and so forth. The equipment ranking that we spoke about earlier, or the criticality, tying that into this calculated priority. And then the last piece is the due date. So as this work order approaches its scheduled due date or possibly even goes over its due date, that priority could increase based off the definitions that we put into EAM.
That makes sense, and that's really interesting to see how it can change with, the parameters that we configure. So next up, we want to talk about the reliability module. So Eric, what exactly is the reliability module, and how have we seen, different organizations or maybe some of our clients utilize this function to really improve their asset management? And how does this differ from the last two features that we talked about?
Well, I think if a site has a reliability engineer or similar role or function, maybe even a department, this module allows them to monitor, specific events, basically failures, and use EAM's historical data to predict those failures. So in simple terms, having this granularity to predict when these failures may occur, it allows us to put in actionable, resource plans, possibly develop strategies to prevent those failures, and also establish a predictive maintenance watch on the equipment so we can shut it down prior to any catastrophic failure.
That's really cool. You're really kind of able to touch on things before it gets bad. So in the last slide, we talked about the type of data that's required to set up these functions. What data elements do we need here for the reliability module? And then can you touch on these graphs that we're seeing in the slide?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just the work order history and the failure codes that the failure code information that we can capture on the work orders. So in this particular graph here, I mean, this is using the CROW methodology, but these are specific points of failures for this piece of equipment at what it's expected in time of when that failure is going to occur. So this is a canned report or image that's available in EAM today.
Wow, that's really interesting, and it's really neat to be able to see this information graphically, not just in an Excel spreadsheet of information. And I can see how this is really going to kind of tie into some of the features we discuss, later on in the presentation, like AI.
That's right.
So we've kind of talked about reliability. We've talked about calculated priority. What is RCM, this is stuff we're showing on the slide right now, and how does it differ from the last few topics we've talked about?
Well, let's compare and contrast kind of the RCM and reliability module and give an example of both. And previously we spoke about the reliability module and using various methodologies to predict when a single failure may occur. So having historical work order information with its failures and the reason for those failures, it allows us to develop tactical plans, potentially understand the timing of those failures and when they may occur. RCM is different. RCM, it's more of an upfront look of the modes of failure. So in within those modes, what's the risk or impact associated to them? So it's more of a planning and assessing tool than a historical analysis tool.
Okay, that makes sense. So RCM we look at as a kind of upfront planning tool where reliability is really taking the data and information we've put into the system and looks for patterns that come off of it. So now can you tell me a little bit kind of about the screenshots we're seeing in this really cool little graph that we've got going on the page?
Yeah, the color matrix that's presented on the screen, that's also a canned report produced in EAM, but it identifies those failure modes that and their cost and the impacts for a specific piece of equipment or class of equipment and where they can occur over time here. So
that's neat. All of these features really kind of function together and provide insight into our data and how our assets are functioning. So Eric, in the first area of our presentation, we've covered equipment ranking, calculated priority, reliability, and RCM. These features have shown us how to raise data integrity by applying these different methodologies. How would you say these features really as a whole help move our system, like we talked about, out of that work order management to a true asset management program?
Well, the features that we've discussed here, they ensure that we're able to arrange and rank the processes that we have for our facility assets or just assets in general by risk and importance. So ensuring that the assets get the proper focus, both from a daily maintenance planner perspective or even from a long-term planning and engineering perspective. So being able to identify these future failures and potentially prevent or mitigate those failures, it adds significant weight to the type of data that we're collecting during our maintenance activities.
That's great. I mean, it really does provide a lot of insight into what we're getting, and I can see how these really do, increase our data, competence that we have on it. So next up, we want to move into area 2 of our presentation, where we really talk about ways to boost work efficiency and to streamline, our work processes in the system. So in this area, we're going to touch on 4 topics. We want to talk about the new dispatching feature. We want to briefly go over the mobile functionality that EAM offers, or that Infor offers with EAM. We want to talk about OpenCAD and then BIM.
All right. So next, so for this topic, let's look at the brand new feature in EAM. I believe this came out in 11.5.1, so right now only available to the SaaS customers, but it's called work order dispatching, and it contains a map view to help dispatch work. So Jacqueline, how does this new feature improve our work efficiency?
So Eric, I really love this feature. It's really got a sleek and simple interface. And what it does is it allows the scheduler or planner, whoever we have in that role, to multi-select work order activities, which has been a key request in some of the past scheduling features. And I can then drag and drop these into an available crew or an available employee that we have kind of showing on this screen. And one thing that's really great, as you can see, guys, from this slide, is this is using our GIS integrated mapping functionality. So I'm able to see not just where my assets are located, but these little gray dots with the numbers over them or the check marks are showing me where my work is and how many work orders I have and whether it's scheduled or not.
Yeah, additionally, you can see, I mean, if our folks have mobile devices out in the field, and it may be hard to see in the presentation, but these little blue trucks is using the breadcrumb functionality of mobile. So that's the last known, activity that was worked on by these folks out in the field. So we can visually see them on the map.
Exactly. And so that really gives us some great insight using this tool, is to know which employees are where, which crews maybe are assigned to a certain truck. And then I can dispatch my work based on those crews, what other work they have near them, what shift they're on. I can use trades, and I can also do it by qualification. So we have a lot of power right in this really simple interface to assign work out. It really does improve the assigning, scheduling, and dispatching work by using the visualization from our GIS data. And it gives us a true idea of really when and where our different crews are needed.
Yeah, it looks very simplistic. The one thing I note on here, I see on this screen though, Jacqueline, is you don't have anything assigned to you, so we need to pile up some work there. But this one other thing to note though with this is more of a daily scheduling tool. So things that you're scheduling today, it's not something that's used for future activities.
That's a great point. This really is, kind of scheduling the here and now, or what's coming in. And Vincent Van Gogh down here, he's a busy man. He's already got 7 hours scheduled to him. So the next feature we want to talk about is, I think, one everybody loves or is getting familiar with, and that's mobile. I really think we could spend an entire presentation or a couple of presentations just talking about the different mobile applications, what they offer, and what's available.
So, well, you're on a roll there, Jacqueline. Why don't you give us a good overview? Why don't you give us a good overview of how we utilize this mobile stuff?
So it's the mobile apps. I really love mobile. If you guys have worked with me, this is one of my favorite things to set up and work on. But the apps have really come a long way, from when they were first released. We have a lot more functionality, things like connected modes, disconnected modes, auto sync functionality, GIS and mapping abilities, new features like non-conformities, checklists that continue to make great advancements. We can handle things like inspections, meter readings. Really, the list of the mobile functionality just goes on, and it continues to grow and evolve over time. But when I, step back and think about what does putting a mobile device in the hands of a technician or, an employee do, I think the biggest benefit we get overall is that I'm collecting that data exactly when and where it happens and by whom is working on it.
Yeah, so we don't, I guess with the mobile application, we don't run the risk of losing paperwork or collecting data that has to go through 2 or 3 people before it's entered into a system. I mean, we have literally everything at our fingertips here, and the technician can input this stuff at the work location, possibly take pictures of before and after if they want, get sign off on the job that's completed, and even, FaceTime one of their colleagues for a potential fix on an issue.
Exactly. It really puts the power in the hands of the technician or the person that's in the field. And what you guys are able to see through this demo that we're showing on this slide is, we started off coming into a map view, finding a work order, based off of location or the assets that we see on the mobile device, and then going through the functionality that we can do here, checklists, adding comments, documents, talking to text, and all those different things that the mobile app has. Now what we're going to show is the new feature that I kind of touched on earlier, and that's called nonconformities. And what this allows the person in the field that's out there to do is collect an issue that's not really tied to the work order. I just have to find the piece of equipment, and then I can say, there's something wrong with this asset that we need to monitor, but not necessarily repair right away. And I think one of the great features that the transit app has, that's what we've been showing here, is the ability on this nonconformity to actually select the exact location that issue's happening. Now, something like a point feature doesn't really make a huge difference, but when I'm looking at my linear assets that are, maybe half a mile long, I can, dive into the exact point where that issue is occurring. And so it gives us a lot of information in a really streamlined fashion.
So I think it's fair to say that mobiles, we know there's improvements coming. We know there's additional functionality coming, but it's really has came a long way since the old Scion DS1100 or the iPAQ ActiveSync days. So that's a little throwback for us old school folks that's been in this EAM realm for a bit.
Yeah, and I think we see this feature just becoming more and more prominent for our technicians or the guys in the field. And like Eric alluded to, there's more functionality and new apps coming. So we'll keep you guys up to date on what all is happening. So mobile, especially in the demo that I showed, really shows kind of the use of the GIS functionality or the mapping component and how we can view assets or work orders, but really as a whole streamline the technician process in the field. But Eric, what if an organization doesn't have GIS or doesn't use that functionality? Maybe they only have one building, for example. How can they spatially manage information inside of a building or campus?
Well, the answer is on the screen here. OpenCAD, it really helps with that. So this would be the module that they'd want to use to be able to identify assets located within a building. So the power of OpenCAD, it will allow us to create, validate, and even synchronize assets, including their hierarchy information from a simple drawing, DWG file or DGN file. So we can do this without even having programs like AutoCAD.
That's awesome. So kind of parallel, just like we see Esri's functionality with the ability to maintain something like linear assets, OpenCAD allows a similar functionality, but more so in the realms of buildings or campuses. It really allows the user to visually see and locate items, kind of like we're showing on the screenshot, via a CAD drawing.
That's right. We can do, space planning analysis, assist in identifying spaces that may be vacant or unassigned. We can even take an OEM PDF of a part or a specific asset and load the bill of materials through OpenCAD. So it's a very, very powerful tool.
Yeah, the build of material things is awesome. And I can really see how overall this expands the functionality of EAM, but more so even just streamlines operations. I don't have to go in and enter each of those assets. I can do it from an automated system.
That's right, but just wait, there's more.
Ooh, so tell me about what's more. The next feature we want to talk about is BIM. But Eric, what exactly does BIM do, and what does it offer our customers, and how does it relate to CAD?
It's similar to OpenCAD, except personally, I think it's cooler. It's more of a 3D model-based process. It allows us to virtually, walk through an area or walk through a building. And I every time I talk about this or see this, I think of the big glasses and folks playing those games and stuff. But this is, just being able to move through a building, through rooms, virtually able to identify things that are behind a wall or under a floor. I mean, that's taken the management systems that we have to the next level.
I mean, it really is, and I can't imagine if you had this set up and fully implemented how helpful this could be when a large section of your workforce is maybe working remotely, and we're able to identify and talk about the same things using this functionality.
Absolutely.
And I mean, the whole OpenCAD and BIM thing really almost seemed futuristic. It's going to be cool to see how those continue to grow in the system over time. So we've really seen how, these tools that we've talked about can help boost our work efficiency when set up and configured. So Eric, how do the topics that we've covered of dispatching, mobile functionality, OpenCAD and BIM, in your thoughts, really help elevate EAM beyond just that work management piece?
Well, I'll start with the mobile aspect. I mean, mobile allows us to capture accurate data at the right time, and it eliminates that need for desktop input that happens well after the fact work is completed, typically. The new dispatching feature, it allows various groups like planners and coordinators to manage the backlog from a graphical display and assign activities, again, for that day to various people or crews. And then the OpenCAD and BIM, I mean, it's just plain and simply cool.
Yeah.
Jokes aside, being able to graphically identify areas where work has been planned or simply navigate to precise location in a building through a 3D image and create a work order on that is cool. I mean, the old way of finding assets through that hierarchy search, that's challenging in a sense, but being able to visually walk through a building and click on the asset and create the work order, that's powerful.
It really is. And I think, kind of the theme we see through this work efficiency area is really making things simple. We're taking some complex processes or data, that maybe is hard to capture and gather, and we're making it streamlined and simple and easy to get the right information out that we want to capture.
That's right.
So Eric, we've finished the first two sections and we've made it to our third area of discussion. In this topic or area, we want to review EAM features that enable and support asset condition monitoring. Eric, can you tell me a little bit about the features that we're going to cover in this section?
Yeah, I will. At a high level, we've got 5 areas that we're going to be discussing here, or 5 topics that we're going to be discussing here. So I'll start with condition assessments. And condition assessments we're probably familiar with, but it's ways to assess the value of the asset's current state. So it's basically the grade card of that asset as of today. We'll touch on nonconformities, which you did show in the mobile piece, but that's really a way for us to easily support our risk management strategies. It provides a specific evidence of, deferred maintenance or possibly state of good repair items. So the third one would be our IoT and SCADA. So it's super detailed data, real time, and how things are performing within our operations. and then tying that into alert management, being able to act on that data that's collected from assessments, from nonconformities, from IoT. And finally, the future is AI. So being able to take that monitor data and the various elements and auto-magically act on it, make things happen.
So I think this is a really fun section because we really get to, take an asset and you look at it from all the points of view, right? You're able to see how is the condition now? What do we think is going to happen in the future? We're getting the influx of things like SCADA information. And then, also kind of taking that, all that information and looking at it, at the next phase and using that AI or alerts functionality. Sure. So this is a fun one. Yeah, we get to really assess the information that we have. So the first feature we want to talk about is asset condition monitoring and the condition assessments that kind of go along with that.
Well, and again, in the public sector, it's pretty prevalent, but condition assessments, they allow us to score our assets throughout their life cycle, via whether it's simple inspections conducted at varying time, so whether it be a year or 2 years or 3 years, the condition assessment applies. As I stated, it applies broadly in the public sector, but in the case of transit, in the transit industry, this stuff could support the state of good repair programs that are there.
So Eric, that's really neat to hear. And one thing I'm noticing on the screen is it looks like all of this information can be collected with the mobile app, right?
That's right. It can. I mean, you can do this completely on the mobile application, and in EAM in itself, it's fully capable of capturing this type of data via standard functionality. I mean, it's there with the mobile device and also with the base EAM application.
So right, it doesn't take a lot of extra setup or configuration or anything beyond what the out-of-the-box functionality has. So it sounds like condition assessment really gives us information and insight into the current state of an organization's assets.
Yeah, these assessments, they allow us to, harness the data that we're collecting, and it really facilitates our budgeting and capital planning exercises that I know we all love to get involved in.
Oh, budgeting. It's always a fun topic.
Mm-hmm.
So next up, we want to look at a new-ish feature called nonconformities. We touched on this when we were talking through the mobile slide and demonstration. But this feature, it's really utilized to capture anomalies and then their development over time. So something, a great example is like a roof. Like we see that there's an issue, maybe there's some damage, but it's nothing that needs to be repaired or replaced immediately.
Yeah, it's a way for us to track deferred maintenance, basically, and doing that without having to create a work order. Because anytime we create a work order or a work request, I mean, that's got to be managed, and it clutters up the backlog.
Mm-hmm.
So nonconformities, they're basically deficiencies that are important enough for us to capture systematically, so they're not lost in the shuffle. I mean, the old ways of doing this was, like I said earlier, creating a work order or writing it down on a piece of paper or 3x5 and filing in the cabinet. And, maybe we remember it, maybe we don't.
Right. We kind of avoid the issue of things that are found in the field just getting lost. And this feature is really cool because it essentially has endless possibilities for capturing that deficiency and tracking it over time. We can use this on every type of asset we have, but kind of for contextual reasons, how have we seen our clients use this, in real life?
Well, I think from a facilities perspective, the image on the screen shows that where, roof inspections and whether there's the ponding or shingles that need to be replaced, that could be a nonconformity. From the transit side, I use some of our transit customers as an example. The inspecting of bridges, I mean, that's required by federal, state, and local regulations. So the nonconformity module will allow agencies like that to identify deficiencies and prioritize them accordingly, with pictures and comments and such, without the need of creating all these work orders to track. So the specific deficiency itself can be monitored over time and will show up on every work order that's created for that specific entity.
Exactly. And I can really see, this feature gives us a real systematic way to capture, review, process, and then address the issues at the proper time. So next up, we want to move into a favorite, kind of buzzword that we hear lately. IoT, or Internet of Things, are, and this really ties into our SCADA information that a lot of us have out there. So Eric, can you tell us a little bit about how we've seen this data utilized in the system?
Well, I think a lot of us that use EAM today, have integrations into varying systems. And so we've been doing this for a while, well before the Internet of Things acronym was a thing. So this is really low-hanging fruit. To be able to get something like meter readings, which is shown here on this screen, and tie that into EAM, feed it into EAM automatically. It's a simple integration, and it adds huge value and benefit. Being able to set up our PM programs that's going off of runtime hours instead of a calendar frequency. It adds a ton of value to what we get or what we're managing within EAM.
Right. And I think, having this type of integration in place, it gives us, like you said, that as close as we can get to that near real-time data entry as to when, something's happening or when something hits a certain milestone. But it also takes the manual effort out, right? So by doing that, we help correct issues of inaccurate data or, where something doesn't get entered for, maybe a week or a couple of days. We're able to see it real time. And really, just that data accuracy is huge.
Well, you're right. And in the first area, we talked about data integrity. this ties right into it. We're capturing data real time from the existing systems that we have that adds value into our maintenance programs that we've established.
Exactly. And I think it's really cool. Our next area that we're going to talk about is alert management. And we really see these two things kind of go hand in hand. So at a real high level, alert management all it does is it searches the database for specific data or information. And when that data or that query is found, it alerts the requester that's been notified. So Eric, this feature has been around for a long time, but how have we seen our customers really make use of it and utilize it to its fullest potential?
Yeah, what we're showing on the screen is an actual representation. This is from a customer that's actually using alert management within their operations. So in a sense, an email can be sent out by alert management that a specific piece of equipment is not operating efficiently, which is depicted here. That can also trigger a work order for that particular inspection or potentially a rebuild for that piece of equipment.
So, right. So when I'm looking at this slide and I see this really cool graph on here, it looks like there's a jump in performance possibly after that work order was initiated or completed, or maybe once the rebuild happened.
Yeah, correct. So using our IoT, again, that cool buzzword, but using all this data that we fed into the system, again, alert management triggered the email and work order for a potential rebuild. That rebuild did occur, and now you can see that this piece of equipment is operating optimally.
This is awesome. It really helps, automate the system and automate functionality that needs to happen so there doesn't have to be as much manual processing or involvement. So the last topic we want to talk about is AI. AI is really kind of that ever-evolving and growing feature we see in all types of software that's out there. Most organizations are sitting on years or even multiple decades of historical data and information. What AI allows us to do is it lets us look into this data and we can mine it and we can use it to learn or predict what could happen to our assets.
Yeah, exactly. So we're marching towards this prescriptive maintenance notion. So using that data from our IoT initiatives, that historical analysis and those what if scenarios. So this is the future of maintenance. I mean, it's also, in my opinion, it's great to see that N4 has a vision to include this type of infrastructure, which they're calling, it's known as Coleman, within EAM.
Right. So just like Siri or Alexa learn that when I wake up, I pack up my stuff and I go to the gym and my phone, I open it up and it already has a map and it knows where I'm going to go and it knows how long it's going to take me. It really seems like maintenance as a whole is heading in the direction of really predicting what could happen based off past patterns.
It is. I mean, all the information we've discussed up to this point and in the previous slides, it directly supports this machine learning vision. I mean, a pump or whatever it is, an asset continually operates on or below its optimal range. Well, Coleman is aware of that deficiency. It creates the work order for us and orders the parts for us to fix the issue that it knows about. I mean, it sounds, I don't know, scary a little bit, but it's the futuristic stuff. So kind of Star Trek-ish, like beam me up, Scotty, or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really the direction that we kind of see lots of software heading, and we almost see it happening without much interaction. Like you said, all the things that we're doing previously are really leading to what maintenance is going to become. So I really love learning about how all these features can begin to, I think the big word here is proactively help manage our assets and really the facility as a whole. So to recap, we talked about condition assessment, nonconformity, IoT and SCADA, alert management, and AI. And we saw how all of these really can be used to enable that robust condition, asset condition monitoring that I think everybody wants. But Eric, how do these features in EAM, kind of go back to that first premise that we talked about, moving really out of the work management side to a true asset management system?
Well, I think we're empowering our users with good data, with viable data that it allows them the opportunity to be proactive, and then they can consciously act on things instead of react.
I agree. I think that's one of the main points, that if I could tell everybody what to take away from our discussion, is the idea of, really looking at your system and how do we move it out of a reactive state to that proactive asset management system. And I think as we dive into the last area up for discussion, we really kind of hone in and focus on that idea. So the final area we're going to cover is asset investment planning. This section includes decay curves, capital planning, and burst. Eric, collectively, what do these features as a whole allow us to do?
Well, they allow us to collaborate. I mean, really, if I had to sum it up with one word, it would be collaboration. And they allow us really to communicate the asset management priorities, the responsibilities, and it really enables the organization to promote that culture of collaboration using real data, viable data within our EAM system.
I think it's so cool. It really kind of ties everything together. So first up, we want to talk about decay curves. This is a newish feature, and I'm curious to really see what it provides the users in EAM. Can you tell me a little bit about this enhancement?
I will, and this ties directly into the the equipment rankings we were discussing. This is, as you stated, a new-ish feature, but decay curves I think they're a great enhancement to that equipment ranking module. So, with the addition of a few fields on the asset screen, and those are pertaining to the service life or usage of the asset, we can get some pretty good information on end of life or estimated end of life just by populating these fields. So I'll try to explain this as best as I can, but we've always had the commission date on the asset screen, or a lot of times we change it to install date, but we've always had that date and never really did too much in the system, but we had it there. So adding information into these fields of expected life of equipment, which is a field on the asset screen, the system will automatically populate the end of useful life or remaining useful life based off of usage auto-magically. We don't even have to create a work order to get that information. So it's I think a pretty cool and important feature.
Yeah, I think it's really neat to see, and it sounds like one of those features that's incredibly useful once it's implemented. But unlike some of the other things we've talked about, it's really easy to implement. We just need a couple of key pieces of information, and we can derive this information back out. And we can do it all without creating a work order and having to manage that work order in the system.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the work orders are still important. Of course, they'll add value to more specific types of end of life for the equipment. But as we're collecting our master data information or asset registry information, I mean, we can visually see this type of stuff without even having to create a work order at first. So it's very, very powerful.
Yeah, that's huge. So we've kind of been discussing how all these individual features function to really elevate EAM, the system as a whole. But investment planning is really about bringing kind of all these features together to provide accurate forecasting for infrastructure planning, right?
Yeah, that's it. So we're actually combining the data and information we've been discussing through this entire presentation, and it becomes very, very powerful. I mean, the culmination of this stuff, that we're getting in the system. I mean, it allows us to peer into the future basically and forecast what our expected dollars or capital dollars are required for replacements or renewals. So we're really using this data to make key decisions in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it really almost becomes, I'm using air quotes, a crystal ball, so to speak. I mean, it really helps us dive and look into the future once we kind of take all these features we've talked about and harness the power of them together and push them into, these planning tools.
Yeah, this particular report that we're showing on the screen, it's been in a few presentations. I think N4 even uses this report in some of their presentations, which is great. We love that. But in a sense, it's basically showing year over year what's required from a capital perspective. And this is on facility management example here, but what's required year over year for replacement. And the key at the bottom here is what they need to save each year to be able to well, let me step back here. This is what they need to save each year to be able to handle this type of capital forecast.
Exactly. I mean, it's really great to be able to see, in something like a graph or a table we have here, that 1 year our expenses and our costs might be really low. We look at the 2020 column here, the 2021, and that, replacement reserve that we need to have is very low. But as we look at that over the time span of 10 or 20 years, we can see, like you said, the amount we need to save to really be able to properly fund our facility or our organization or whatever we're trying to provide funding for.
That's right.
So we're at the last area that we're going to talk about in our presentation, and I think this one's really cool. I mean, we hear about business analytics and big data or data lakes. Software intelligence solutions, really more and more is the true role of software grows and evolves within organizations. how is Infor looking at aggregating all of this different information? And then what does the Burst tool offer the Infor customer base?
Well, from a public sector perspective, the public sector organizations are moving towards the data lake paradigm. So data from all their enterprise systems, they want to be able to aggregate this stuff together and be able to analyze it collectively. So the power of the data that we're collecting as it grows and these data sets are combined together, I mean, that's the real premise of big data. So this is where Burst comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, Burst sounds like a really helpful tool. I'm really interested to see how kind of it grows and evolves over time, because I think this is really what everybody's heading to, is that data aggregation from all the different sources and seeing, our total picture of where we stand as an organization. So we're up to the last recap, and the last area that we've covered is asset investment planning. We've talked about the decay curves, investment planning, and then last we just spoke about Burst a little bit. So what would you say is the biggest benefit an organization gets once they, set up and start using one or all of these features inside EAM?
Well, I think, just to sum it up, I think being able to provide, practical information like estimating end of life or estimating cost of replacement and understanding those replacements 5, 10, 20, 30 years out. I mean, the power of that type of information, it elevates EAM out of that simple work order management system to really a best of breed enterprise asset management program.
Right. We're really taking our system out of the idea of I'm going to count work orders that are completed or I'm going to count work orders that are late to really a true system that moves us to a proactive asset management system or program.
That's right. So just to recap, I mean, in this presentation, and we've spent about 55 minutes here, but we've reviewed features in EAM that really help elevate EAM to the next level. So at a high level, we've discussed topics and functions that move your system simply above that work order management stuff. So if there are topics that you guys are interested in, reach out, let us know. I mean, we would like to do possibly further demos on some of these topics down the road instead of showing PowerPoint presentations, but at a high level, this allowed us to show some of the features and functionalities that we see are important to elevating EAM beyond work order management.
Right. So I think if there's enough people interested in continuing the conversation from today, we would love to send out a survey to discuss future presentations. Maybe a survey that kind of categorizes these topics and you guys mark a favorite, something like that. But if there's one that you are really interested in and you want to set up in your system, you can always reach out to Stratum by emailing support@stratumcp.com, or you can email Eric or myself. Our emails are on the screen. You can also contact us on LinkedIn or Twitter. We have a YouTube channel that we're working on adding more videos to. So, really, all of us at Stratum, we love EAM. We'd love to talk features with you, maybe implementation plans. And really, we'd love to help you strategize and come up with the best plan for your team or organization to really move you to that next level. So I just want to say thanks for attending. We look forward to showing you guys new stuff in the future. And hopefully we'll speak with you all soon.